So it's around 6 p.m. in the evening, and we're heading up a pretty massive hill to try and get a first-hand look at one of these mines to see their environmental impact.
In Africa, tens of billions of dollars in gold is illegally smuggled out of the continent each year.
What we have found is that more than 435 tons of gold was smuggled out of Africa in 2022. And at the current price of gold today, this corresponds to a value of more than 36 billion US dollar.
Ghana, one of Africa's top gold producers, has seen the impact of that illegal mining.
Among the biggest complaints from communities here in Ghana about illegal mining is that water that was once clear is now polluted.
While the vast majority of the world's gold comes from large mining companies like Newmont, Barrick Gold, and Agnico Eagle, gold is also a source of income for millions of small artisanal miners, a source of revenue for many African governments, and the cause of human rights violations and environmental degradation. And gold prices are surging. In January, spot gold rose more than $2,600 an ounce. U.S. gold futures have seen similar levels. One reason for that growth is that in difficult economic and geopolitical times, investors bet on gold for its ability to store value.
We've seen this perfect storm of just geopolitical events with the war in Ukraine and what's going on in the Middle East.
All the fundamentals that have caused gold to have a fabulous year this year are still intact.
The sky's the limit, to be honest.
That makes sense. Gold is a very classic way of retaining wealth. Obviously, it also can be transferred into any other type of currency because every country will want some amount of gold. So you're not as locked in to any particular country or currency, which makes that particularly helpful. And it's just the classic version. This is probably what your grandparents or great-grandparents or great-great-great-grandparents did in order to retain wealth. And it's something that is trusted, as they mentioned, especially as certain countries are having issues, gold prices increase. We've actually seen something similar to Bitcoin, where people are starting to put money into Bitcoin when they're worried about their own country. I think we saw something similar with like Russia and Russian citizens when they started to have the war with Ukraine. And I believe China, this is happening there as well due to fear around their economy. And so this is ways that basically everyday citizens can take their money and then transfer it into something that they seem more reliable, and this is why this spikes up over time, and it's just a classic option to go to. This could also imply that people are preparing, broadly speaking, for some type of fallout, whether that's like a market crash or whatever it is, because again, that's where it will be based off of some uncertainty. So the expectation is, I have wealth, I want to retain that wealth, I am fearful of that wealth disappearing. So inherently that means that people are scared about whatever could be happening with wealth. And so that could be an indicator that at least the general consensus in the market is poor at the moment.
In gold prices.
Retailers like Costco are getting in on the action too, selling as much as $200 million a month in gold bars. The Warehouse Club started selling bullion in late 2023. And prices could go even higher, reaching up to $3,000 an ounce by the end of 2025, according to Goldman Sachs. We traveled to Ghana to find out what impact illegal mining is having in Africa. While legal mining is subject to environmental regulations, that's not the case for illegal mining, locally known in Ghana as galamsey. Ghana's gold exports were expected to reach $10 billion in 2024. Small-scale miners make up about 40% of Ghana's total gold output. About 70 to 80% of small mines are unlicensed.
20% of gold produced around the world is from those small-scale sources, whereas the small-scale mining is often very informal. There is a lot of illegal activity.
Small-scale miners dig shallow holes across acres of land near bodies of water without refilling holes after the gold is extracted. Mercury, often used to extract gold, can leak into the water. More than 60% of Ghana's freshwater sources are contaminated by chemicals and toxins from illegal gold mining.
This is the Butri River. 2 years ago, it was very clean and pristine. And this is the effect of galamsey on our water bodies. It's very devastating.
When you look at Google Earth and you look at a map of Ghana, you will see that a vast majority of the territory is no more green, but it's more brown. So in terms of pollution, not on the different river, but also for the farming, it has been a disastrous impact.
In October, hundreds marched in Ghana's capital, Accra, calling on authorities to end the practice of illegal mining. Yao Mwafo, a small-scale miner operating legally, says he's been in the business for a decade and employs around 24 people. He says his business and those like it are caught in the crosshairs of this fight.
I need the same water to do my business at the site. At the same time, I need it to drink it or bath with it. So why should I go and spoil it before using it?
Ghana temporarily banned small-scale mining in 2017 and has weighed a further ban.
If the government ultimately cracks down and says small-scale mines cannot operate anymore, what does that mean for someone like you?
Let me say this, it has brought out foreign income to the country.
It's become an integral part of the economy.
Yes.
Before being sold to buyers, gold is sent to a refinery, like the Sahara Royal Gold Refinery, where it is weighed, put in large tumblers with acids, and then smelted into bars.
Refining basically means you taking out impurities.
While the price of gold is reaching all-time highs on Africa's so-called Gold Coast, many refineries are laying idle.
And because it's a cash-driven industry, it's difficult to regulate. Participants are, in some cases, dependent on criminal organizations and may inadvertently contribute to terror financing, money laundering, sanctions evasion, or human rights and labor rights abuses.
Undeclared gold is very problematic for several reasons. One, of course, is because no tax can be collected on it. So this will result in significant revenue losses for African states. And undeclared gold is also gold on which no control were made, which means that there is a high risk that this gold has been produced in violation of human rights or the environment.
The top gold producers are China, Russia, Australia, Canada, the US, and Ghana.
It takes a significant amount of scale to produce the amount of gold that's produced annually. And most of the gold comes from major gold miners like Barrick and Newmont, Kinross Gold, Agnico Eagle, and various smaller miners. And gold is also a byproduct of other mines.
Africa produces between 1/4 and 1/3 of the world's gold, with more than half of the gold extracted on the continent in 2022 coming from artisanal and small-scale miners. China alone mined 378 metric tons of gold in 2023, or about 10% of the world's total. Since the early 2000s, more than 50,000 Chinese gold miners have migrated to Ghana to work in small-scale.
That's pretty interesting. That's a lot of migration just for this gold mining, but that does make sense. If the price of gold is increasing drastically, then the incentive for participating in the gold mining in some capacity is also going to become even more enticing as time goes on. And as they mentioned, they're currently projecting that prices are going to still continue to surge by the end of this year. And so that means there's a lot of people looking at it thinking, oh, this looks like a profitable business. It's going to become more profitable throughout the year. And this is where if people need money, they're going to be looking for a variety of ways to do it. And so for them, it doesn't really matter whether it's legal or legal at some point. If you are struggling to make ends meet, if you don't really have enough resources to allow your family to survive, then you start to dip into some of these less legal activities in order to make ends meet. And so one of the struggles that they also mentioned is the lack of taxes that they're able to collect on this gold because it's like a cash-based business. This is something where, depending on your perspective, you might be against taxes, broadly speaking, but taxes do allow for your government, in order to continue enforcing the laws, it allows them to potentially benefit the community and the area that it's around. And that's the point of taxes, is obviously it goes to the government, but the government should also be helping its people. And so this is where it can also set you back, or like your community back, even though I'm sure nobody likes paying taxes. there is a legitimate reason for them.
If we take the example of Ghana, a large part of the sector is controlled, for example, by Chinese citizens. The Chinese arrived with excavator and started to extract those gold in a very problematic manner. They extract gold illegally. Most of the time it is smuggled directly to Dubai.
Dubai, sometimes referred to as the City of Gold, also plays a critical role and is home to more than 20 gold refineries and 7,000 traders in precious metals and stones.
If you want to avoid having gold from the DRC linked to conflict, or I don't know, in Sudan or for Mali or for Zimbabwe, the majority of this illegal gold is exported to the UAE. And from the UAE, a large part of it is also exported to Switzerland. And then from Switzerland, we know that a huge part of gold is also exported to the US. But when it's imported in the US, the majority of the importer will just say, oh, it gold from Switzerland, refined in Switzerland. The origin of this gold would just be Switzerland. But this gold, which is sometimes presented...
Yeah, we saw a similar problem for tariffs in a previous segment, where basically like the last mile is where we usually attribute a lot of the things. And so this is where like other countries were moving their goods to like Mexico to be finished there, and then it would be a good from Mexico instead of a good from China or the UK or wherever it was. And so this seems to be a similar practice, which is basically you're sort of like obfuscating the history of that item as you pass it along. So everything goes from Africa to Dubai, and then Dubai to Switzerland. And so people in the US or whoever they're going to sell it to is mostly going to know about Switzerland. And even if they share where it came from before that, they could say Dubai, which is not necessarily anything suspicious at that point. And so this is where they won't necessarily know exactly where that gold came from or what might have been behind the refinement and collecting of that gold.
As recycled gold can be gold which was 2 weeks before in a mine controlled by a jihadist group, by a Wagner group, or by other criminals.
Gold exports from Ghana more than doubled between 2012 and 2022, from 243 metric tons to 609 metric tons.
Wow, that's quite a big difference. That is a 10-year span. So it does make sense that there could be efficiencies in that pipeline, but that is quite a bit of an increase.
The UAE, Switzerland, and India were the top recipients of African gold during that same time period, accounting for 80% of the continent's exports. Historically, about 212,000 metric tons have been mined worldwide, including about 2/3 extracted since 1950. Taken together, that gold could be placed inside a cube measuring around 22 meters long on each side. Gold is a popular material in jewelry and an essential metal that performs critical functions in spacecraft, jet aircraft engines, computers, communications equipment, and other products. It is also held and sought after by central banks around the world.
It's around 20 to 22% of all the gold that's ever been mined is being held in central bank vaults, or central banks own that gold. And so central banks continue to try to diversify away from fiat currencies, in particular the US dollar.
Gold is expected to extend its bull market run as central banks look to purchase more of the yellow metal in the future.
One of the reasons why we remain bullish on it going forward is that we see US debt to GDP is unsustainable and just an insatiable need likely in the future.
So again, this is sort of what I was mentioning earlier, which is gold prices usually increase when there's uncertainty around the market and general financial institutions or the government. And so those are the primary reasons why people start to invest in gold, is when they think things are good and things seem reasonable, gold prices don't surge as much. So this definitely seems to be indicating some uncertainty either in the government or the market, broadly speaking. And to see it at such a wide area, to see prices skyrocketing so much and that it's already projected to keep skyrocketing throughout the year, means that people's fears of something bad happening are on the rise and that they haven't hit their peak yet, but we will see if they touch on that more.
For more quantitative easing. And this debasement of the US dollar is the biggest reason why central banks continue to demand gold at a high level. Despite really gold prices continuing to go up, central banks are big buyers.
I think it's the ultimate insurance policy in an increasingly uncertain world and is the best insurance policy against the reckless fiscal agenda of both Democrats and Republicans.
But how do investors and consumers know if their gold is properly sourced? The London Bullion Market Association, a UK-based trade association, has become the global standard for gold refineries around the world, maintaining a list of 65 gold refineries worldwide that have proven to source gold legally.
Our standard has become the de facto global standard for gold refineries and silver refineries around the world.
But experts say, despite that seal of approval, consumers, companies, and the entire supply chain need to be hyper aware of where their gold is sourced.
I think we all have a responsibility of consumer, because when you buy an iPhone, when you buy a jewelry, I think you have to know where this gold comes from. And if it's not possible, you have to ask. And if the company where you are buying this is not in a position to give you the answer, then it's a red flag.
Anybody that's investing in gold or diamonds for that matter, you should understand that there are places in the world where these commodities are being produced in unethical ways.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.